Hey guys, in this video I want to go over how I use Obsidian Canvas to distill and connect ideas. And I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone here and simultaneously go over the process while also diving into this idea of following your most intense obsessions mercilessly. Alright, to kick it off, I want to talk about the process. So for me, it's starting with one single idea. Then I move into breaking down that idea into many ideas or just parts, right? What I'm looking for is the resonating phrases and words that I can dive deeper in so that I can tease out the idea. And then finally, I sprinkle in my thoughts, perspective, and ideas as I am teasing out these many ideas inside of this one single idea. All right, let's take a look at the idea that I started with here. It is a quote from Franz Kafka, and it says, "Don't bend, don't water it down, don't try to make it logical, don't edit your own soul according to the fashion." Love that line right there. Rather, follow your most intense obsessions mercilessly. This is from Tiago Forte's favorite quotes from Second Brain on his blog. When I came across this, I had to write it down. This I already had in my notes, so I simply just added by using this icon and dragging over. And then I searched for the word or for the quote. So Franz, don't bend. You select it, and there it is, right here. Okay. Now, to move on to the next step, I did break it down into these mini ideas or phrases that really kind of struck me that I wanted to kind of dive deeper into and kind of tease out. So those were: don't bend, don't water it down, don't edit your own soul according to the fashion. Then this word rather was a word that I wanted to kind of tease out. Follow, and then also your most intense obsessions, and then mercilessly. What does that look like? Well, this is what it looks like. So each of these are their own cards. A card is not a file in the Obsidian Vault. It is just a sticky note on a whiteboard. And so you can tease out and think through and dissect ideas on this canvas without necessarily committing to having something be in your second brain or in your personal knowledge management system. And then these are also all cards here. Now within these cards, you'll see that I have some ideas that I already had or quotes that I already had inside of my vault that I wanted to link and add in here. And then some other ones are new, and they came about me actually diving into these words and these phrases inside of the quote. So let's see. Let's start with don't bend here. After I created the card, I bolded this right here because this is what I wanted to focus on. And then I like to think in bullet points. So I think and write in bullet points, right? And so I just started writing what it immediately reminded me of. And so this immediately reminded me of the quote, "Creativity is deviation from expectation," which is from Jack Conte. I don't know how to say his last name. He is the CEO of Patreon. But he set this line and went into how we bend our work to fit inside of a box it was never designed to fit into. And we make content instead of art. Those things really spoke to me. And I just thought, when I think of the words "don't bend," this is what comes to mind. And I already had this inside of my vault. So all I needed to do was to search for it. And that's just using the double brackets here. And then I can search for the quote. And then I can add it in here. And so this leads me to the first tip here, which is that You want to think of what the word or phrase, right here, in this case, don't bend, reminds you of, and then search for those notes in your vault. It may be one, it could be multiple notes. And then you can search for them by doing the double brackets. Something that you can do is to search the keywords that you remember. In this case, like what it started with was creativity, so I searched creativity. Or you can search for distinct words, like maybe deviation. And this is not something I would have a lot of that word inside of, but creativity, I'm going to have a lot of that. So if I wanted to find it a little bit easier, I can look for the words that are a little bit more out there and the words that I don't use that often. I want to pause just for a moment here and give you a free gift for hanging out with me today. This is a short PDF guide on how to get insights from the nonfiction books that you read and that you love into your PKM system. By the end of this guide, you'll have a simple system for highlighting your books, a mindful approach for adding content to your PKM system or PKM Notes app, a process for creating building blocks of knowledge for the future, and then a simple tip for making more connections between your notes. The link to the free guide is in the description below. Okay, let's keep going. So I went on to look up the definition of the word bend, which means to shape or to force something straight into a curve or an angle. Now, when I was reading that definition, I wanted to place that definition inside of a thought that I had that related to this phrase, don't bend, that related to the quote in its entirety. And what came out was, don't force yourself into reading, highlighting, connecting, or creating something that doesn't align with your heart, with your creative fingerprint. Okay? Now, this goes into step number 2, or not step number 2, tip number 2, is what I call follow the word trail. It's a technique that I use where I look up the definition and synonyms of a word to spark ideas, sometimes antonyms as well, and thoughts. And this led me to insert the definition into the thought that I had. This was not something, it was not a card already, or it was not a note in my vault, I should say. It was just another bullet point where I started typing, don't force yourself, to reading, all that stuff. And then I thought, as I was going back over it, okay, I actually want to save that. I really like that, and I want to remember that. So I double bracketed those words so that I could save it. When I go into the note, now I have a lot of connections that I've mentioned here, but on the card itself, I wanted to link back to the canvas. So double brackets, and then I can search merciless note-taking is what I've titled this, right? It's already there, but I wanted to show you. And then where this started was creativity is deviation from expectation. And then as I was writing this note, I thought about this other quote from T.D. Jakes. It is impossible to extend yourself beyond your ability without compromising your authenticity. And same thing here. I went in and I tied the notes together by linking them and adding them to this note so that when I look in the graph view, I can see the connections. Now this leads me to another tip here. You want to keep writing. Don't edit yourself. Don't try and edit and think, well, this doesn't really fit. This doesn't really go together or whatever. Like, just keep writing. Keep writing. Use bullet points if that helps you. It helps me a lot. And you'll find more ideas. And when you find an idea that you want to save, turn it into a note. And what's cool is this is a note that is inside of this card titled Don't Bend. And it's inside of this canvas titled Merciless Note Taking. Right? A note can be born from anywhere. And so I love that I was able to come up with, not necessarily that it was something that was awesome or anything. It's just something that resonated with me. And I was able to save it inside of the place where I was working. I didn't have to go to a separate space to save this. I just simply was able to make it a note with just a couple of clicks. Another tip, you want to connect existing notes to your new idea. This new idea that I had was don't force yourself into reading, which reminded me of it is impossible to extend yourself beyond your ability without compromising your authenticity. I tied these together by going inside of the note and actually I didn't do it on this one. I did it on this one. Tying it back to don't force yourself. I could put it on both. Okay, now let's pause for a second and note we've got all these connections from just teasing out 2 words. I don't know about you, but that's pretty cool to me. So let's keep going. Don't water it down. This is the next phrase that I wanted to think about. And I started thinking this speaks to how we communicate our ideas and things that we find interesting. We tend to water things down to lessen the taste, the original taste of the taste of the original idea, so that it can appeal to everyone. Forget that. And then I started thinking about how I just sometimes will say something or withhold something because I don't like to create waves. But then I had this thought of, what if the waves that you create are meant to carry someone that's lost at sea to the shore? And if I go into this note, what sparked this idea, this title here is, are you withholding a quote, a thought, an idea for fear of what people might think? I have. And I don't want to make waves, but what if the waves that I make carry someone to a place they need to go? Which turned into this title here. Now, thinking through that, I also thought of the quote, don't become a wandering generality, be a meaningful specific, from Zig Ziglar. Now I can go in here and I can start adding in my quotes. I can do / and then type a bullet point. For those of you that are not super familiar with Markdown, you can use the / commands, which I'm familiar with inside of other note-taking apps, so it's really helpful for me. But I can add in some things here that, let's see, the waves, that's what I'm looking for. There it is. What if the waves you create are meant to carry those lost at sea to the shore? Okay. I just wanted to tie that together. Oh, I also can do this too, which is merciless note-taking. Add that to it. And I had another thought about don't be lukewarm, which is a concept from the Bible in Revelation, that verse there that I thought of as well. And then we move on to don't edit your soul according to the fashion. This made me think of the note, don't let calculated algorithms erode your creative fingerprint. And this came from Jack Conte's same talk where he talked about creativity's deviation from expectation. We modify what makes our heartbeat faster because we are conditioned to believe that views, likes, and subscribers are success. But what if success is that you pursued what you loved for the day? For me as a Christian, it's, what if it's that I created with God today, that I allowed him to lead me into creating something and to thinking through something that eventually came out as a note that I could save and be able to remember for later or to share with somebody else or both. And I struggle with this. I forget that I wasn't created for validation from other people, but just pure affection from God. So this thought here led to find out what makes you come alive and keep collecting ideas that define and support that. I want to pause real quick and jump over to the graph view, because none of these quotes and ideas were connected prior to this exercise, prior to teasing out the words from this quote. So if I open up the graph view and I search maybe deviation here. Okay. Now, I think it's pretty cool that these did not exist together before the one quote that I actually decided to dive into. Imagine if you were to take one quote a day or one thought a day and do this over and over and over and over, like how many connections you have and would have inside of your notes app, but also inside of your mind. Every time that I create a connection, like Nick Milo says, from Linking Your Thinking, he talks about whenever you make these connections, in Obsidian or whatever note-taking app, you're still making it inside of your mind too. It's happening in both places. There are neural pathways beginning to form, and like I kind of think of these as neural pathways for me, right? All this is being formed inside of my mind as connections, and they weren't before at all. So it's pretty cool. Let me go back and keep going. So we've talked about a lot of the don'ts that stood out to me, right? Again, these are all cards. Some of these are notes now inside of the vault. Now all of this is leading to, with these lines here, this word rather, which for me, I didn't have a lot to say about it, but it is simply, there's a better way. When I think about the word rather or instead, it means to me there is a better way. And the better way starts out with follow. The implication here is that we should be guided by something. But what? Follow what? Follow your most intense obsessions. Here, we're being led by the ideas that have us, that won't let go. Which reminded me of the quote, "People don't have ideas, ideas have people," from Carl Jung. Which led me to, your PKM will be a joy to review whenever you know it's full of ideas that you can't stop thinking about. Now, we're almost done here. We want to follow our most intense obsessions, but he describes how we should follow them. Mercilessly. This communicates how we should follow the ideas that have us. And it reminds me of the word diligence. Not the English definition, but the Hebrew definition, which means sharp-pointed. Right? There's a focus and a precision that allows those who possess diligence to cut through the noise, to go after something ruthlessly. And then I pulled in some notes that I already have about diligence. Diligence is not a skill that you acquire. It is a person you become. Diligent people recognize opportunities and seize them. Diligent people work willingly. All of these ideas I've had inside of my mind, inside of my PKM, and this gave me another hook, right? Along with this idea of being diligent and it being described as sharp-pointed, and how this all started with a single note, a single quote, right? I hope that there are some things that inspired you today to try this and to take, one line, one word. It could even be one word, guys. Like, pick something, right? Something that inspired you that day. Use the random note feature in Obsidian and just pull something and pull out a canvas, an endless whiteboard, and start teasing out the ideas. and write down your thoughts and just let it kind of flow out of you and see what you come up with. I'm almost guarantee you'll have this new constellation of ideas that happened to me, where you'll have the connections that you didn't have before. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you next time.